Well, I know you, the viewers, like to see some of the previous segments that we've done and kind of do a follow-up, and that's what we're going to do here today, is show you some things that we've highlighted earlier this season. And in my hand are some cuttings that we've taken just a few weeks ago off of our tropical garden, and I want to show you how some of them are doing. Actually, this is a potato vine, and it's a good idea to kind of pull on them a little bit. If they feel snug, I wouldn't pull them out. But notice on this flat over here, some of them haven't done so well. They're starting to die back on the tip. They've defoliated. That doesn't mean I'd give up on them yet, because here is one that's trying to break loose. But again, that feels pretty snug, where that one, see, came right out. And even though it's come out of there, it calluses over and you'll see a few small roots that will come out. But unless it sends out another sucker or breaks bud, that one would probably still go ahead and die. So it's a good idea to always check on them. You'll see most of the others are doing pretty good. And back here on the Marguerite daisies, this is one that we took from the north side of our barn bed. But let me show you some more things. You want to keep an eye on them. They're starting to put out little buds again, and we pinch those out to start with, remember, because that takes some of the energy. So I would go in and pinch the center of those out where you don't see any of those buds coming out, or let them bloom, because again, it does compete with the energy that's going to the root system. Also, much earlier in the season, I showed you how to basically propagate a staghorn fern. We showed you how to build a little holding case here with some chicken wire, and then we just stuck the little pieces in there in the peat moss and kept it damp, and look how much growth we've gotten on this particular one. And you'll remember we stuck a very, very small piece over here, and it's even taken off for us. So now we've brought it into the greenhouse, and we still keep it moist, but it would definitely freeze. But pretty easy to do, and we're real pleased with the results so far. And speaking of the tropical garden, I think people are really interested to find out what in the world we've done with our bananas. Well, remember, we had 3 of them that were here that were ornamental, red foliage bananas, and this is the only one we've left in the garden spot. What we did, Alan came in and cut off all the foliage and the very growing tip right above the point, so it's right above the main stalk basically. Then he wrapped it with plastic, put some bales of straw around the plastic, wrapped it again with a piece of plastic, and then we took these pallets, made a little frame, and basically put all of our compost in here right around. So we're going to try to keep the trunk from freezing and leave it right in the ground and see what happens. We've also tried to insulate the root system a ways out from the trunk. So it'll be interesting to see how this one makes it through the winter, and of course next year we'll show you how that comes out. Now the other 2, one of them we just dug up, knocked off some of the soil, put it in a bucket. It's stored in the barn, so we're kind of letting it go dormant. And then we did dig one up, repot it, and it's in our tropical greenhouse on campus in the teaching greenhouses, and we appreciate them working with us, because that was quite an effort to get them out of the ground. So we've got them all kind of prepared for the winter rest ahead, and again, we'll keep you posted. Now I'd like to take you over there and show you some more interesting things in the garden that's coming around this fall. Well, I still think this is one of the most phenomenal years that we've had for fall color, and we're even seeing it in our perennial vegetable garden here with asparagus. Now, in a traditional fall, we get an early hard freeze that turns the asparagus crowns, or the tops, just brown basically. But this year, again, look and see the foliage is turning a nice yellow color because of the nice fall we've had, and it really is complementary where the female plants are with the berries. But as a reminder, we generally will leave the foliage on the asparagus during the wintertime, because that helps insulate them. So they'll go ahead and turn brown, and we'll leave them right here all winter long and then cut them off early next spring. The only time that you probably wouldn't want to do that is if you've had like some of the cercospora or fungal leaf spots on the spears and the foliage and the ferns. And if that's been a problem, wait until they get completely brown and then go ahead and cut them off. Get rid of them, burn them, or compost them really would be better, and then come back in with mulch or something and insulate the crown a little bit so we don't get any winter injury. But we've been pretty fortunate to not have too much of the disease, so we normally just leave them here, and that's okay, and the insulation really helps protect them. And speaking of insulation, our asparagus is right here among our strawberries. If you've watched the show over the past several years, you know that in the wintertime when they go dormant, we'll come in with a lot of leaves or straw again, and cover them and insulate them and keep them from dying back. Well, a couple of winters we've gotten in trouble by doing that because of the timing. It's really not a bad practice to do, but if you're going to do that, you need to wait and make sure they are completely dormant. And that takes sometimes up into December, maybe even early January. And then once you know the foliage is burned back pretty good, then you can cover them up to protect them with the crowns. You also have to get it off in plenty of time because remember, strawberries start growing pretty early to set that early fruit crop. This year though, for us, we're going to go ahead and just leave ours without protecting them and see what happens. Because last year we got them on a little bit too early. We lost some of the plants even from moisture and rotting and stuff. The only thing we're going to worry about this year, if you look closely, you'll see the deer have already started coming in and are chewing them back pretty good, eating the foliage off the leaves. We'll try to get that under control a little bit by protecting them because again, we want the foliage there to help insulate as much as they possibly can. But just a couple of reminders of things that you might want to consider in your garden. Now let me take you over to our instant vegetable garden and I'll tell you what we've got in store for that garden. Well, what you're seeing here is what we refer to as our instant vegetable garden. And if you watch back, say in, oh gosh, probably early May, we showed how to put in an instant vegetable garden for those of you who may be impatient gardeners. And what we did, basically right in the middle of a Bermuda lawn, we came in and cut out all of the Bermuda grass. We showed you how to do that pretty easily. Almost like removing brownies from a pie pan, basically. Then we mixed in as much organic matter as we could at that time, a little bit, and then put in some fertilizer and covered it with a weed barrier. And we actually cut on the edge of the garden with the weed barrier and then put the wood chips over it. And you'll see why we did that is obviously to keep that Bermuda grass from growing up under it because it's so aggressive. And then we were able to treat it either with Roundup on the edge or weed eat it to keep it from encroaching. And we had really quite a bit of success. You'll see the tomatoes produced well, the peppers, we had parsley and cilantro and zucchini squash in here. And really harvest was pretty nice. Now, those of you who tried something like this, take advantage of the wintertime though to even improve the soil more. So what we're going to do is we're going to come in and we're going to pull out the cages and all the plants because we've had our first frost, remove the mulch here, the weed barrier, and we're going to wash it off, roll it up, and try to get another year's usage out of it. And then I'll show you what we're going to do after we get that pulled out. So we'll be back to you in just a few minutes. Well, you'll notice now that we've pulled out all of the plants and the row cover back, the first thing that I'm doing is really trying to get as much of the tomato foliage and peppers and the fruit and everything out of there as possible, because remember, if there's any disease problems on any of that stuff and you leave it in the soil, you're likely to encourage the disease again next year. So again, before you do any more work, just try to get as much of it cleaned out as possible. Now, for those of you who have pulled back your top and you're pleased with the soil mix, you know, we put in some silage topping in this back in May as well. If you've not done a soil test, which obviously you didn't because you put in an instant garden, I would encourage you to do so now. And you can use a shovel or a spade. You can also find some soil probes like this, but basically what you do is you look at your entire spot in about 8, 10, 15 different places, try to get a soil test with the probe using 6 inches or so into the soil. Now that was plugged up, but you want to go down at least, again, 6 or 8 inches, and you can see how it doesn't take long to get down to the heavy clay here in Stillwater. So we only have about 4 or 6 inches of good mixed up soil. but you want to just do that randomly throughout the garden spot. Once you get all of that in there, then mix it up together as best you can. And what you're doing is taking a random sample from the entire spot. And all you need is about, a pint jar full and a little bit less, but you then take that sample to your county extension office, or you can pick up the bag ahead of time. Mixed all up, put in here. You want to take out any roots or debris or anything, put in here. And then mark under the homeowner section what you want to have tested. And that will then get your results back so you know how to amend it next year before you start to garden. Now with us, we're going to put a little bit more organic matter in here because you could see when I was putting the soil probe in, it's still pretty heavy clay. So what we're going to do is actually put some of these wood chips back in. Now normally they're high in carbon and you wouldn't want to do that, but they've started to break down pretty good. When we were raking it back even, there were just hundreds of earthworms, which is a good sign that they're incorporated in here and helping us break it down. So we're going to put a lot of those wood chips right back into the spot because we have all winter to help break them down a little bit further. Now we'll still have some of them in there next year when we plant, but I don't think it'd cause us any problem. As well as the wood chips, we're going to use some good old compost that we've put together here at the Studio Gardens. And this is just, people would die to have compost like this. Talk about black gold. Alan used a screen to kind of sift out the coarser pieces, but that is wonderful compost. And we're just going to scatter it along the top. And we'll put quite a bit of that in here. Now you can use any other kind of organic matter as well. Compost, cow manure, silage topping, even straw shredded up would work well. But then we'll till that in and we have all winter again to get it to break down and put some of the nutrients and loosen up the soil a little bit. That's why we would wait until early spring or late winter to do our soil test. Now another thing that you can do is use cover crops or green manure crops, especially those of you in southern Oklahoma. I think you still have time to put some out. But like Austrian winter peas, some of the cooler season cowpeas, clover, vetch, some of those types of things. You sprinkle the seed in here, get it to germinate, let it grow through the winter, and then till that back in next year so you're adding more organic matter to the soil. And now that there's nothing really growing, it's an excellent time to do that. So get out to that instant garden if you put one in. Take advantage of the non-growing season to work up the soil. And if you haven't done a soil test, again, you can see it's very important to do so now because you have time to get the results to know how to amend it before next year's growing season. So we're going to finish up here by putting the wood chips in ours and getting it ready for the winter time.
We hope you've enjoyed this classic from the Oklahoma Gardening Vault. Remember, even though these tips and techniques are timeless, there's always something new to learn in the world of gardening. By subscribing to both Oklahoma Gardening and OK Gardening Classics, you'll have access to a wealth of gardening knowledge, both classic and contemporary.